Walk into any major enterprise today, and you will find that the technological mandate is completely uniform: integrate artificial intelligence. Across global markets, 88% of surveyed organizations report they are now regularly using AI in at least one business function. But that top-line adoption metric masks a severe operational bottleneck. Getting a model to generate text is easy. Integrating that capability deep into existing corporate structures is entirely different. The data shows that 66% of these organizations are effectively stalled, trapped entirely in the experimentation or piloting phases. This is pilot purgatory. Teams deploy localized, disconnected tools that perform narrow tasks, but those tools fail to connect to the broader, revenue-generating systems of the company. Organizations can acquire AI capabilities with a standard software license. Capturing measurable financial value, however, remains a separate operational challenge. To measure success at the enterprise level, we have to look past user adoption and focus on earnings before interest and taxes, or EBIT. Across the thousands of companies surveyed, only 39% report any measurable EBIT impact from their AI initiatives. For the vast majority of that group, the financial gain remains below 5%. From 88% using AI, we filter to 33% scaling, isolating a 6% sliver of high performers, achieving over 5% EBIT impact. Reverse engineering this cohort reveals a proven scaling blueprint built on 4 vectors: objectives, workflow, agentic scope, and risk management. Achieving scale relies entirely on how the technology is deployed, requiring a rigid architectural framework rather than a simple software upgrade. The median enterprise approaches AI with a defensive objective: cost reduction and operational efficiency. An efficiency-first mindset forces leaders to look at their existing, isolated tasks and ask only how a machine can execute them slightly faster or cheaper. Cutting costs inevitably hits a mathematical ceiling. Eventually, you reach a local maximum where further optimization yields diminishing returns. This comparative bar chart tracks AI goals. The median company peaks strictly on efficiency, but high performers behave differently, aggressively targeting top-line growth and innovation. Pitching tools to save localized labor secures only experimental budgets. Positioning AI to capture market share secures major capital investment. The cultural mechanics follow suit. An innovation-based vision galvanizes a workforce. Employees rally behind a shared opportunity for expansion, lowering internal resistance to change. Treating AI strictly as a defensive cost-saving tool actively limits its value. Breaking out of the pilot phase requires aiming directly for top-line expansion. A pervasive executive misconception treats AI as a standalone software upgrade that can be installed into current operations without disrupting the surrounding machinery. The average company attempts to bolt AI nodes onto legacy processes, fully expecting the historical workflow to remain static while the localized node works faster. This split-screen logic model illustrates the high-performer contrast. On the right, successful organizations abandon the linear add-on approach. They tear down the workflow and rebuild it from the ground up around the new compute capability, creating new feedback loops and decision gates. Artificial intelligence cannot transform a business if the business refuses to alter how its work actually flows. Currently, enterprise technology markets are saturated with intense hype surrounding autonomous, agentic AI. An AI agent is a system capable of acting in the real world, planning and executing multiple sequential steps across a workflow without requiring a human to prompt it at every single stage. The curiosity is massive. 62% of organizations are now actively experimenting with these agents. But this corporate heat map reveals the reality of agentic scaling. Generalized deployment is a myth. High performers restrict agents exclusively to isolated niches: IT service desk management for routing and knowledge management for deep research. Outside these distinct use cases, cross-functional deployment is virtually non-existent. In 2025, successfully scaling advanced AI relies on deploying it within highly localized, rigidly defined parameters, rather than chasing generalized autonomy. Adopting foundation models carries systemic risks, most notably intellectual property infringement, regulatory compliance failures, and model inaccuracy. This double bar graph reveals a counterintuitive risk paradox. The top 6% actually report higher rates of negative consequences. Why? They deploy AI in mission-critical environments rather than isolated sandboxes. They survive this intense exposure through systematically higher rates of active risk mitigation. The primary mechanical safeguard separating the 6% from the rest of the market is institutionalized human-in-the-loop protocols. High performers hard-code defined processes that dictate exactly how and when a model output requires mandatory human validation to ensure accuracy. Combining automated processing speed with human expertise creates hybrid intelligence, a method for deploying AI in high-stakes environments while maintaining accuracy. Achieving scale requires accepting a higher risk profile through active, critical exposure, strictly governed by institutionalized human oversight. Executing a structural workflow redesign and implementing robust risk mitigation protocols requires one highly specific, absolutely critical resource: significant capital allocation. Enterprise-wide transformations cannot be sustained on experimental, localized pilot budgets. Over 1/3 of the high-performing cohort are committing greater than 20% of their entire digital budgets directly to AI technologies. Allocating 1/5 of a total digital budget forces the initiative out of middle management testing and demands rigorous top-down executive ownership. Without aggressive capital backing and dedicated C-suite commitment, even the most sophisticated deployment strategies will inevitably revert back to isolated experiments. This layered diagram assembles these deductive findings into a single comprehensive mental model, the high-performer blueprint. First, abandon cost-cutting and scale toward growth and innovation objectives. Second, dismantle legacy workflows and redesign them entirely around the AI compute node. Third, deploy advanced agents strictly within localized domains and mitigate mission-critical risks through hard-coded human-in-the-loop validation. Finally, wrap this entire operational architecture in a definitive executive-level capital commitment. The data from the top 6% provides a clear lesson. The true barrier to achieving return on investment is no longer the capability of the technology itself. It is the enterprise's willingness to rewire its own structural foundation.